If Charles Babbage had his wish, we might have entered the information age the same year that Queen Victoria took the throne. The visionary inventor had created a steam-powered analytical engine, which eerily presaged the modern computer. Now there's a campaign underway to build Mr. Babbage's machine. John Graham-Cumming is an author and technology historian who's leading the campaign. We reached him in London.
Mr. Graham-Cumming, we know that Charles Babbage never actually got to build the entire analytical engine, but if he had, what would it have looked like?
Well, it would have been about the size of a small truck, weighing several tons, made out of gunmetal, which is made of bronze, so quite a beautiful, shiny object, covered in gears, basically. One bit of it looking all the same, which was the memory, and another part where the calculations were done, the CPU.
And powered in what way?
Well, powered by steam. At the time he was working, electricity was around but wasn't powerful enough, so steam would have been the way to go.
So what would it have been able to do?
Well, it was a general-purpose digital computer. Of course, it didn't have a screen. It had a printer, and it could do all of the normal arithmetic operations that computers do today. Underlying it, though, it's the same technology that's really in all computers today. So it's mathematics, and it's programmable.
And how would it be programmed?
Using punch cards.
Oh.
Charles Babbage had seen Jacquard's loom in France, which of course was using punch cards for weaving, and he adapted that technique to program his computer.
Now, he never built it, though. Why do you think this is in 1837, why do you think it never got built?
Well, I think part of it is he got caught up in the classic computer person problem of always improving it and coming out with new versions. He basically kept adapting his ideas up until his death in 1871. And so he was constantly making it smaller or bigger or faster or better. So he sort of built bits of it but never completed the whole thing.
Did other people say, Mr. Babbage, you have to get this built. We need this analytical engine. We need a computer, if they used the word then at the time?
Well, no. So the word computer at the time was used to refer to a person whose job was computing things, so adding up lists of numbers, doing calculations. I think one of Babbage's problems was he was well ahead of his time, 100 years ahead of his time, and not very many people really understood what he was about.
Did he explain what he wanted to use it for, what its purpose might be?
Yes, I think he did. Initially what he wanted to do was calculate tables of numbers, things like log tables, navigational tables, to great accuracy. But he went on to explain other calculations that could be done with the engine. But I think that people didn't realize that quite how powerful the machine was that he was creating. Babbage did. He actually said that he believed that once it was built, it would guide the course of science forever.
Wow, that is forward-looking.
Yes.
And nobody bought into that, I guess.
A few people did. Of course, the most famous is Ada Lovelace, Lord Byron's daughter, who became fascinated by the analytical engine and helped translate a paper and write notes from which we understand a lot of its construction. But not many people appreciated really what Babbage had in mind.
But he also had already built a calculator, did he not?
Well, so he started out building this thing called the difference engine, which was really a calculator for producing tables. He then realized that he could build the analytical engine and went off and worked on that. And then having worked on that, he went back and created difference engine number 2. And none of these things were constructed during his lifetime completely.
Oh, wow. We're just thinking this sounds like an episode of Doctor Who. Someone Doctor Who visiting Charles Babbage to see what he's up to.
Well, you do wonder quite what would have happened if Victorian Britain had suddenly got the computer.
But let your imagination go. What might have happened if Victorian England had the analytical engine?
Well, because I think the most likely thing is that the real effect would not have been to Victorian England, but would have been to the development of computers in general, because what happened was computers didn't really get invented until the 1930s, and Babbage's ideas had lain essentially undiscovered for a long time. If you can imagine that the computer had been invented and was being used by Victorian Britain, once electrical devices became usable, you can imagine the computer being invented much more early. So I think that's really the big impact.
And how much memory would this computer have had or would have if you built it?
Well, it's a little difficult to compare to a computer today because it was using decimal rather than binary. But if you do the conversion, the sort of low-end machine would have had about 1.5K of memory.
Now, that's a fraction of what we'd have today in a computer, yes?
It is, but if you think about the home computers that were coming out in the 80s, that's quite comparable.
So now you're trying to raise money in order to actually build Charles Babbage's machine. Is that right?
That's right, yes. I'm trying to get enough enthusiasm behind this idea and people pledging money that I can start a project to actually build it, because I think that it would be wonderful to be able to stand in front of this machine and say, this is what thinking 100 years ahead is like. This is the fruit of that sort of thinking.
How much money do you think you'll need?
I'm hoping to raise about £500,000 to get the project up and running.
All right, we'll check back with you, Mr. Graham-Cumming, and we'll see how it goes. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
John Graham-Cumming is an author and technology historian who's leading the campaign to build Charles Babbage's Analytical Engine. He was in London.